Sydney hated this hour. Too late to be night, too early to be morning. The city felt hollow in this in-between time, its heartbeat sluggish. He trudged down the narrow steps of the basement laundromat, the flickering fluorescent light casting ugly shadows over dented machines and cracked linoleum. His arms ached from stocking shelves all night at the mini-mart. His uniform smelled faintly of stale coffee and plastic wrap. The laundromat was almost empty, except for the hum of rotating drums and the low buzz of a cheap radio. And Xander. Sydney barely knew him, just another tenant in the building. One of those guys who looked effortlessly cool despite living in the same run-down place. Long limbs, a sharp jawline, an attitude that said he didn't care, even though Sydney suspected he did. "Rough shift?" Xander asked, glancing up from his phone. Sydney sighed, shoving his uniform into the washer. "Yeah, you?" Xander shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd wash some clothes while I waited for the universe to make sense." Sydney snorted. "That's an ambitious goal for a laundromat basement." Xander smiled, just a tilt of his lips, barely there, but enough to show something in the heavy air between them. For a while they sat in silence, the machines filling the room with their rhythmic noise. Xander stretched his long legs out, tapping his foot against Sydney's sneaker, casual, but intentional. "You know," Xander said, voice quieter now, "this place sucks, but at least you're here." Sydney blinked at him, surprised. Xander's gaze was steady, unguarded in a way Sydney hadn't seen before. A slow realization crept up. Maybe this wasn't a random coincidence. Maybe Xander had waited for Sydney to show up, like this, at this terrible hour, in this terrible place. Sydney swallowed, the bitter taste of exhaustion fading. "Yeah," he said, nudging Xander's foot back. "At least you're here too." Xander glanced at the dryer timer, then back at Sydney. "You got time for coffee? There's a coffee just around the corner." His voice was casual, but there was something careful in the way he asked, like he wasn't just talking about caffeine. Sydney hesitated, exhaustion pressing down on him, but it wasn't the kind that coffee fixed. It was the kind that needed something else, something like this. He exhaled a quiet laugh. "Yeah, coffee sounds good." Xander stood, stretching, and Sydney followed. The laundromat machines kept spinning, but for once, the morning didn't feel so empty. Thank you for joining me. I'm Gio, narrator of this piece. It was written by Copilot. Thank you for joining me. Peace, my friends.